What's up everyone, welcome back to another episode of Workshop Rebuild. This is the first episode of 2022 and I'm back on the John Deere 400. Many of you guys voted on my community post that you guys would like to see the John Deere and that I should focus on this. So I will put my effort into the John Deere 400 and get this thing knocked out. So it will be running and driving here very soon. In my last video, you guys saw me mount the engine onto the engine mounts of the frame. I placed this in here and I got everything ready so I could start up the engine. The engine did fire on just almost half a turn, so I was super satisfied with that. I did 1 hour of running time now, so the engine is perfectly running. I went ahead off camera, I mounted the drive shaft from underneath. It wasn't very easy because this drive shaft is very finicky and there's actually not a lot of room since I already mounted a whole bunch of components, but I did manage to get it in there. I'll give you guys a close-up view on that. Once I share that with you guys, I'll focus on the front of the engine. We'll have a good look at the PTO, how the PTO mechanism actually works. And then from there, we'll mount the cable, which hooks up to our PTO lever, which is on the right side of the instrumental panel. And I'll share with you guys how to mount everything around that. Then we'll mount some guards, as well as the muffler up front. So get everything tidy up front. Then I'll move on to the back. I'll share with you guys also how to check the pressure. I won't do it on camera, but I'll just go into detail on how you guys can do it at home. So I'll share with you guys those values, and I'll also talk a little bit about the hydraulic block, which works together with the rear end. So stick around until the end. As you guys can see down below, the drive shaft is in place. I brought the drive shaft in from the bottom in this area right here, pushed it then forward. The adapter mounted to the flywheel just fine. I pushed the drive shaft onto the adapter. I put the spring pin in, and I also put a zip tie inside of the spring pin and close it up. This gives it an extra layer of security that the spring pin will never fall out. So up front, everything on the flywheel is tidy. And in the back, we have it mounted on the input shaft of the rear end. And this also has a key, so it just has to slide on from this side back, and that's in place. And now there's no movement. If you have too much play here on the back, you want to make sure your key is in good condition, and also your bore from your rear end of this yoke. So you really want to make sure that all these parts are very tight when you mount them. If there's anything loose, you really want to make an adjustment there. I will focus on the front end of the tractor very soon. So that is around the PTO and also the PTO lever. I'll share with you guys how to hook up the PTO engagement that will run across the engine in this area right here and down onto the PTO tensioner. Before I do that, I really need to install the oil cooler, which is in this area right here. We have 2 lines on the oil cooler. The oil cooler is right there on that table, so we'll have a good look at that. This right here is our oil cooler. One line will come out of our hydraulic motor. That is the straighter hydraulic line right here. And the one that's a little bit wavy like this has to go through a couple hard lines down below, and also that it doesn't touch the drive shaft. That's why it's pre-bent like this. And this will then mount to our steering valve, which is on the side of the garden tractor. That is right here. The second line will mount right onto that fitting. That's an elbow fitting. And the other line, which is a little bit straighter, will mount to the left side of the hydraulic motor. That is this fitting right here. I installed the oil cooler and both hoses are mounted to the fittings, and I'll share with you guys how I routed the hoses. I'm on the other side, and on the right side we have our 2 hoses. So the longer hose will go down straight in between the frame that is in this triangular cutout. The engine mount bracket is right behind here. So the hose goes right down in here. and it follows down underneath the whole frame all the way out to in front of the instrumental panel. So right here, it's actually fairly loose. It just guides along the right frame rail, comes down out back, misses this fan blade. You really want to make sure that it doesn't touch this fan blade. And then the hose comes up here underneath this hard line and into your hydraulic motor right here. And I tighten this up. The other hose goes down below, works its way through, and that's why it's a little bit bent. Goes underneath the drive shaft on this side, out over here, and underneath into the valve off to the left of the garden tractor. I tighten that on this side. This is the lowest hose right here, and it goes to this valve, and it is the most forward fitting on the whole assembly when we look at it from the side. So it goes into this elbow fitting right here. So the oil goes from the motor out into the main valve block. That is a 3-spool valve block. From there, you have your options for any implements. The oil is just trapped in there, but it also goes into the steering valve. So when you turn your steering wheel to the left or to the right, it will give you that power assisted steering. From there, the oil goes into the cooler and back into the motor, so it does a circle. So right now, I'll share with you guys a couple more details on the instrumental panel before we mount the battery tray once again. Down below, I still have the fuel hose. I did not cut this to length the last time I used it, so it's still very long. That I can put right there. That will go to the engine eventually, or to the carburetor, sorry. And this was somewhere in this area. I believe it's that indent right there. That was probably for the fuel hose. It was kind of squished under the battery tray. And as you guys can see right here, there were 2 indents probably for the choke and the throttle cable, which are right here. And I think they were in this area. So as you guys can see, there are indents on the top of the cooler. I do not want to have any more damage on top of this cooler. So I might be able to cut out a strip of rubber and put that on top of this oil cooler right here, so these metal parts don't dig into this oil cooler anymore. And maybe it might help with the fuel line as well. But these 3 components, the fuel line and the choke and the throttle cable, mount on top of the oil cooler right here. And we also have our lights. So the wire that goes up front to our engine will mount underneath of this as well. And this all goes underneath the battery tray. So basically all our components are hidden underneath the battery tray and off to this side as well underneath the dash. The oil cooler and the battery tray are in place, and now both bolts on the left side are tightened up, and I'll share with you guys a close-up view right here. This is the left side of the instrumental panel. These 2 bolts are now fully tight. They hold the battery tray right here. This is bent on a 90-degree angle, and it also holds the oil cooler. Before I tighten up these bolts, I wanted to make sure that the oil cooler is up all the way. There is a little bit of play on that bolt hole, so I just pulled it up so it's not close to the drive shaft down below in any way. This battery tray is also held in place by this bolt over here. There's only 1 on this side, and there's 2 down below, which bolt onto the main frame below. Now I'll focus on the right side, and we'll also focus on the PTO lever, which has a cable running above the engine and down onto the PTO tensioner. I have a whole bunch of painted parts on this table. They are all black, and this is the color they're supposed to be. I hope I'm able to mount most of these parts in today's video. If not, I'll be mounting them in a future video. So in today's video, I'll focus on this PTO engagement, and that is with a cable. We have a spring which mounts close to the tensioner. We have this little guide bracket. On the tip of this bracket, we will have a little pulley that mounts right there within that bore. So that mounts right there. That will divert the cable from running this way, then down into the tensioner. Off to the side, we also have this plate, which is technically above the muffler. We have 1 little bore on the top corner, which our cable will have to be fed through. So there are a whole bunch of parts that I have to mount onto the John Deere 400, and I have to make sure all these parts are mounted so I can feed the cable all the way up and through onto the instrumental panel. So let's dig right into it. First thing I'll grab is this cable. I will be removing the clamp on the wire on this end, and this whole attraction here. So we're just left with the clamp on one end where we can mount our spring, and then on the other end we'll just have the end of the wire. So for that, I'll go onto the John Deere 400. I'm on the front of the John Deere 400. I have my spring, which will go directly onto the linkage, which is the tensioner for the front PTO. And I also have the wire right here. On one end, I still have the clamp where I can attach the spring onto. So the other end of the spring will mount to our linkage down below, and I hope I can give you the best shot I can because it's very tight down below. And as you guys can see, I'm activating it by hand. You guys can just see it right down there. There's a little bracket which the spring will be hooked up to, and this gives tension to our tensioner. And as you guys can see, the belt is tensioning on the other side as well. So I have the flash on my camera, and the bracket is right here. So when I lift it up, it pulls on the tensioner, and the spring which I have right here, one end of the spring will have to be mounted right on the end of this bracket. There is a bore going this way, so it can get fed right through there. So once this is in place, I'll bring you guys back. I have the spring mounted to the bracket, and I just hooked up the cable onto the other end of the spring as well. And now you guys see, if I pull this up, the tensioner puts tension onto our belt, and this way our PTO down below will be activated through our crankshaft pulley. Since I'm on the front of the engine, I'm going to add the pulley guard and the muffler. Of parts in front of the engine, and it didn't have much to do with the PTO, but I had to install all these parts so I can go ahead and assemble the heat shield for the muffler. And on the bottom right hand corner, you guys will see a bigger bore, and that is for the cable which will pull on for the PTO. So let me share with you guys how I install this plate. You guys just saw me install the top plate to the side brackets, and you did see probably in the video it is a little bit loose, and I left those bolts loose just in case I need to adjust something. I'll focus on this bracket as well as that pulley over there. This bracket will divert the pulley from going vertical to a horizontal, and that will lead the cable all the way into the instrumental panel later on. So let me share with you guys how to install this. I'm on the right side of the John Deere 400. I'm going to grab my bracket. On the bottom of the area where the pulley is mounted, we have one bore in the middle and one bore off to the corner, which is for a bolt. We're going to grab our wire, which is still under tension, and we're going to feed it right through that bore, just like that. We're going to feed it right through, like so. And I'm going to put the cable back somewhere over here where it won't just fall down again. And I'm going to grab my bolt, which is for the top plate or the guard for the muffler, and I'm going to thread it in just like so. Then I'm going to come over here to the instrumental panel. The same two bolts which were holding the oil cooler will fit right through this bracket. This bracket mounts to the outside of the instrumental panel. So I'm going to mount it just like this. I will give you guys close-up views on everything, so no worries. Just like that. So the cable comes from the PTO tensioner around this pulley. The pulley is bolted onto this bracket here. The cable winds around the pulley, comes out onto this side, and the mechanism which hooks up onto this pin will be installed right away. But there's one more thing I have to install. This is a little guide bolt, and they put it on just like this, and they thread it on from the inside of the instrumental panel, and it sticks out of this bore right here. There is a welded nut on the back, so you guys can thread it in from this side and leave it in right here, so it will guide the wire from this point all the way to the pulley. Now I'll focus on the inside of the instrumental panel. We'll attach the wire with all this hardware onto the levers for the PTO hand lever. This is the hardware. We have an adjuster bolt hooked up to this little bracket which has a bore, and this bore will eventually hook up to this pin. This will be able to pull on our wire. Now I'm going to feed the wire right through this. I have to make sure that everything is lined up properly. Once everything is lined up, I can grab the other hardware, which is down below right here. We have the clamp, which clamps onto the wire. And I'm going to put it facing downward because I do not want it to touch this bracket on the instrumental panel. So it might be a little bit hard here to show this, but I will be installing this onto the wire. I tighten up the clamp around the wire. The wire is now clamped down and it will not move. The guide, which holds the wire in place around the bend, is tight as well, so there's not much play right there on the end of the wire. So for the wire tip, I just took a heat shrink and shrunk that down. I could also solder it, but in case the wires would flare, I did not want to get hurt over here, so I just put a heat shrink over there. Now this part, or this portion of the assembly and the hardware, is adjustable, so here I can still do my adjustments, but as you guys will see, it's already looking very good. I'm going to grab the lever, I'm going to push it forwards, and you guys will see the whole mechanism move backwards towards the dash. Now everything is under tension. The wire is very tight right now. That's very tight. Now we'll go down below and we'll have a look at the front portion. And as you guys can see, the belt right here is under tension. I will leave it like this. I think it's very good. If I still want to adjust it a little bit more, there is still adjustment that I can make right over here, just a little bit. And if not, you can always pull the wire back a little bit more and clamp it somewhere else. I have 3 more parts laid out on the white table, and I'll share with you guys which parts those are. These 2 parts will mount within the instrumental panel. This is a cross member which will hold the tab for the hood latch, and this right here is the pulley guard, or the PTO pulley guard on the very bottom. And I'll grab this right here first and I'll mount that underneath by the front PTO. Of the black parts which were on the white table before. Most of the parts were mounted in front of the engine, some on top of the engine like the cable guide, and also some within the instrumental panel. At the beginning of this video I did mention I will talk about the rear end a little bit. In today's video I will discuss how to check your pressure on your rear end, that is for the hydraulic motor specifically. I will not test it out myself, but I'll explain to you guys how you guys can test it at home. So I'm at the back of the John Deere 400 over here, and we'll have a good look at the hydraulic motor. A lot of people just call it a hydraulic motor, even though it's combined of a hydraulic pump and a hydraulic motor. So we're going to look at the pump specifically, and we're going to have a good look at the 4 ports where we can check our pressure for the hydraulic system. Off to the left we have our charge pump. That's the front pump for our auxiliary hydraulics. We have the outlet of the auxiliary hydraulics right here. This is a hard line which feeds oil into our hydraulic block. And this is our return line, and this is coming straight from our oil cooler. These two set screws right here can be removed and they can be tested for pressure. Now, before I get to the pressure on this, I'll share with you guys the two other set screws in the back. This is for our system pressure. So this right here is for our working condition, and this right here is for our charge pressure. Now I'll focus on the system pressure first. If you guys would like to test your system pressure on the Sundstrand Series 15 inline motor, you would take either one of these set screws out. You would put your pressure gauge in here, thread it in, and make sure you have a pressure gauge up to 5,000 PSI. This pump right here should measure up to 3,000 PSI. So that is the max setting on this hydraulic motor system pressure right here. So anything up to 3,000 or close by 3,000 is a good rating for this system pressure. That is at max throttle of your engine, obviously. Now looking at the charge pressure, this is a different setup right here, and this has a lower pressure or operating pressure in general. And now either one of these set screws can be removed once again, and you would want to thread in your pressure gauge. You can have here only an up to 1,000 PSI pressure gauge, so you can thread it into either one of these. And you should have a reading here somewhere between 500 and 800 PSI. I've been reading that online as well. So it's really hard to understand what exactly the pressure is on this. And especially since on the John Deere 400 specifically, there is no relief on the charge pressure right here. Your numbers might vary between 500 or 800. So it might be very different on your machine at home. If it's anywhere under 500, I would make sure that you have a good look at your charge pump. So I just gave you guys a quick overview on the hydraulic pump in the back of the John Deere 400. It's very simple. You just take one of those set screws out, thread in your pressure gauge, turn on your engine, let it idle a little bit so you have a reading at first, and then turn it up to full throttle after a couple of minutes, and then you'll see your highest rating. Write that down, and then compare that rating with the rating from the manufacturer. Now, I did get a comment down below the other day that someone is having an issue with their implements, that they're leaking and or they're actually lacking power to lift up. So that's not specifically an issue on the hydraulic pump itself or even the charge pump, because the charge pump is for our implement hydraulics. There is another issue, and that would be in your hydraulic block itself. For the system, we have a relief valve. That is specifically a main relief valve. So this hard line right here on the charge pump will lead into the hydraulic block, and there is a main relief. Now, if those springs are weak in general, it could cause your pressure to drop. And also within the spools themselves, so the O-rings that you're looking at, or even the fit within the block could be damaged. So that also could cause leakage internally in the hydraulic block. On each spool, there are relief valves themselves. There are tiny springs, and there are also tiny shims as well. So you want to make sure that everything is perfect inside of your hydraulic block, as well as your O-rings. Obviously, if something is wrong within your hydraulic block, that could cause your system to leak and or your system to be weak while lifting, and also not delivering enough power to your hydraulics in general. Another issue could also be that you have faulty hoses or even old hoses that may be leaking here or there. That could cause a leak. But the last resort, if you do have any issues and or if you have fixed your hydraulic block or hoses, would be your charge pump. I wouldn't check that at the beginning because it isn't the easiest thing to get to. You'd have to actually remove the engine a little bit or lift it up a little bit and remove the drive shaft so you can actually take off the charge pump plate, which bolts onto the front of the pump. So I finished up with the rear end. I gave you guys some advice on my end. I will leave a link down in the description to a service manual on the Sundstrand Series 15 inline hydraulic motor. If you guys do have any issues on the pump or motor itself, you guys can watch a video on the top right corner, or even the hydraulic block. I have covered those videos in the past, so they will be in the playlist also down below. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Leave a comment if you have any questions about the front end of this engine. If you guys have any issues around the instrumental panel, drop a comment down below. I'd really love to help you guys out. And if you guys have any questions about the John Deere 400 in general, just ask away and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. As of right now, I'll be working behind the scenes on some of the panel work. So I have a whole bunch of sanding ahead of me. I will be priming and painting the panels before I even share with you guys anything on the John Deere 400, and hopefully I can get this all done very soon, so we'll have an update on this John Deere 400. So stay tuned.